Most people remember the moment it happened. You reach into the cage like you always do. Your hamster sees your hand. You move a little closer, and suddenly, bite. The reaction is almost automatic. You pull your hand away, surprised and confused, and almost immediately a question appears in your mind. Why would my hamster do that to me? What makes this so difficult for many owners is that they genuinely care about their pets. They provide food, fresh water, a clean habitat, toys, treats, and attention. So when a hamster bites them, it can feel personal, almost like a rejection. But the truth is that most hamster bites have very little to do with aggression. In many cases, your hamster isn't trying to hurt you at all. They're trying to protect themselves. Fear is one of the strongest forces in a hamster's world. Long before hamsters became beloved pets, they survived by being constantly alert to danger. In the wild, a sudden movement, an unfamiliar shadow, or something entering their space unexpectedly could mean a predator was nearby. Survival depended on reacting quickly. There was no time to stop and analyze whether something was dangerous. Their instincts were designed to respond first and ask questions later. And even though your hamster now lives safely in your home, those survival instincts never disappeared. Deep inside their brain, the same alarm system that protected their ancestors is still active today. That's why a hamster can sometimes bite when they feel startled, trapped, or uncertain. Not because they hate you, not because they're mean, but because in that moment, fear took control. Imagine waking up suddenly and seeing a giant figure moving toward you before your mind has time to understand what's happening. Imagine feeling vulnerable, cornered, and unable to escape. For a tiny animal, that feeling can be overwhelming. Sometimes a bite isn't an act of aggression at all. Sometimes it's simply the language of fear. And what most owners don't realize is that the next reason hamsters bite can be even more surprising. Sometimes your hamster isn't reacting to you at all. They're reacting to something you brought with you. Before we move on, there's something important you need to consider. What if your hamster has already been trying to warn you that something is wrong, and you simply haven't recognized the signs? The scary part is that fear doesn't always look dramatic in small animals. Most hamsters won't cry out for help. They won't come running to show they're uncomfortable. Instead, they often hide their stress until it becomes impossible to ignore. And sometimes, a bite is one of the few ways they have left to communicate that they don't feel safe. So as you watch the rest of this video, pay close attention, because one of the reasons we're about to discuss might explain a behavior you've been seeing for weeks, or even months, without realizing what it truly means. And if you want to better understand what your hamster is really trying to tell you, make sure to like this video and subscribe. Every week, we uncover the hidden meanings behind hamster behavior, trust, fear, and emotional attachment, the things most owners never learn, but every hamster wishes they understood. What if your hamster isn't biting you because of who you are, but because of what you smell like? Most owners never even consider this possibility. After all, humans rely heavily on sight to recognize the world around them. We look at a face and instantly know who someone is. But your hamster experiences life through a completely different lens. For them, scent is one of the most important ways of understanding everything around them. Before your hamster decides whether something is safe, familiar, or potentially dangerous, it often starts with a smell. Their nose is constantly collecting information about their environment, detecting details that humans can't even begin to notice. Every scent tells a story. Every smell carries meaning. And sometimes that meaning can lead to a bite. Imagine you've just finished petting a dog, holding another small animal, or even preparing food in the kitchen. Maybe you've used a scented soap or touched a cleaning product. To you, nothing seems different. Your hand still looks exactly the same. But to your hamster, your hand may suddenly smell completely unfamiliar. When you place that hand inside the cage, your hamster isn't necessarily recognizing you first. Instead, they're encountering a scent they've never smelled before. A scent that has suddenly entered what they consider their safe territory. For a prey animal, unfamiliar smells can trigger immediate caution. Their instincts tell them to investigate, to stay alert, to prepare for the possibility that something isn't right. Sometimes that investigation comes in the form of a gentle nibble. Other times, especially if the hamster feels nervous or uncertain, it can become a defensive bite. What's fascinating is that your hamster may not be reacting to you at all. They're reacting to the information their nose is sending to their brain. In that moment, confusion can quickly become fear. That's why experienced hamster owners often wash their hands before handling their pets. Familiar scents create familiarity, and familiarity creates safety. Because sometimes your hamster isn't rejecting you. They're reacting to a stranger your scent has temporarily turned you into. One of the biggest mistakes hamster owners make is assuming that trust is automatic. They believe that because they feed their hamster, clean its cage, and care for it every day, The hamster should naturally feel comfortable around them. But trust doesn't work that way in the mind of a prey animal. In fact, trust is one of the most difficult things for a hamster to give away. Imagine being a tiny animal in a world where almost everything around you is bigger, stronger, and potentially dangerous. Your survival depends on being cautious. It depends on noticing threats before they get too close. That instinct doesn't disappear simply because a hamster becomes a pet. This is why trust takes time. Many owners unknowingly damage that trust by moving too fast. They bring their hamster home and immediately want to hold it, play with it, or pick it up every day. Their intentions are good. They want to bond. They want the hamster to become comfortable with them as quickly as possible. But from the hamster's perspective, something very different may be happening. A giant hand keeps entering its space. A giant creature keeps trying to touch it. And it still doesn't fully understand whether that creature is safe. When a hamster feels overwhelmed, trapped, or pressured before trust has been established, fear begins to replace curiosity. Instead of seeing your hand as something positive, they begin seeing it as something unpredictable. And unpredictability creates stress. That's when biting can happen. Not because the hamster dislikes you, not because it's aggressive, but because it's trying to regain a sense of control over a situation that feels frightening. The surprising truth is that the strongest bonds are usually built by owners who move the slowest. They allow the hamster to approach first, they respect its boundaries, they give trust time to grow naturally. Because to a hamster, trust isn't something that can be forced, it's something that must be earned. Before we continue, I want to ask you something that most hamster owners have probably wondered at least once. Has your hamster ever bitten you? If it has, what happened right before it happened? Were you trying to pick them up? Did you wake them up unexpectedly? Or did the bite seem to come completely out of nowhere? Leave a comment below and tell us your story. You might be surprised to discover that other hamster owners have experienced the exact same thing. And here's a fascinating fact that many people don't know. Hamsters often make decisions about safety in just a matter of seconds. A single unfamiliar smell, a sudden movement, or a moment of confusion can completely change how they react to a situation. That means a bite isn't always about aggression. Sometimes it's about fear, sometimes it's about uncertainty, and sometimes it's simply your hamster trying to understand a world that feels much larger than they are. So I'm curious, what was the strangest reason your hamster ever bit you? Read through the comments too. You may find a story that sounds surprisingly familiar, or even discover the real reason behind a bite you've never fully understood until now. Many hamster owners believe a bite happens in a single moment. 1 second everything seems fine, and the next their hamster suddenly bites them. But what often goes unnoticed is that the bite may have started long before that moment ever happened. Trust is fragile in a hamster's world. Every interaction either strengthens it or weakens it. And sometimes, without realizing it, owners slowly chip away at that trust through small actions that seem completely harmless. Think about what happens when a hamster is sleeping peacefully and is suddenly awakened, or when a hand reaches into the cage without warning, or when they're picked up before they've had a chance to decide whether they feel safe. To us, these moments may seem insignificant. To a hamster, they can feel overwhelming. Remember, your hamster doesn't see the world the way you do. They don't know your intentions. They only know what they experience. And when experiences repeatedly make them feel startled, trapped, or powerless, they begin associating your presence with uncertainty rather than safety. That's where the real problem begins. Because fear doesn't always appear immediately. Sometimes it builds quietly over time. One uncomfortable experience becomes 2. 2 become 5. 5 become 10. Then one day, your hamster bites. Not because they suddenly became aggressive, but because their trust has been stretched to its limit. In many cases, the bite is not the beginning of the problem. It's the final warning. The moment your hamster finally communicates what they've been feeling for much longer than you realized. And what makes the next reason even more surprising is that sometimes your hamster isn't protecting itself from you at all. Sometimes it believes it's fighting for survival. One of the most surprising truths about hamster behavior is that your hamster doesn't always see your hand the way you see it. To you, it's a hand, a familiar part of your body, something harmless, something that brings food, treats, and care. But your hamster's brain isn't interpreting the situation through human logic. It's interpreting it through survival instincts. For thousands of generations, hamsters survived by reacting quickly to potential threats. In the wild, danger often came from above. Birds of prey could swoop down without warning. A shadow passing overhead could mean the difference between life and death. And even though your hamster has never encountered a hawk or an owl in your living room, those ancient instincts are still alive inside them. That's why some hamsters become nervous when a hand suddenly reaches down from above. To us, it's a friendly gesture. To them, it can resemble the approach of a predator. Their heart races, their muscles tense, their brain switches into survival mode. And when an animal believes its safety is at risk, it doesn't stop to analyze the situation. It reacts. Sometimes that reaction is freezing in place, sometimes it's running away, and sometimes it's biting. What makes this especially heartbreaking is that your hamster may actually trust you. They may recognize your voice, your scent, and your routine. But instincts are powerful. In moments of fear, instinct often speaks louder than familiarity. That's why experienced owners often approach their hamsters slowly and at eye level. Whenever possible, they allow the hamster to see them coming and understand what is happening before physical contact occurs. Because sometimes your hamster isn't trying to hurt you. It's simply responding to a survival system that has protected its species for thousands of years. And the next reason hamsters bite is even more unexpected, because sometimes the bite has nothing to do with fear at all. Before we continue, here's something surprising. Not every hamster bite comes from fear. Some bites happen for a reason most owners never even consider. And once you understand it, you'll start seeing your hamster's behavior in a completely different way. If you're enjoying the video, make sure to like and subscribe. We explore the hidden meanings behind hamster behavior, trust, emotions, and instincts, so you can better understand what your hamster is really trying to tell you. And trust me, the next reason hamsters bite is probably not what you think. What if I told you that sometimes your hamster bites you because it's actually trying to learn more about you? That sounds strange at first. After all, most people associate biting with aggression, fear, or frustration. But in some situations, a hamster's bite has a completely different meaning: curiosity. Unlike humans, hamsters don't have hands they can use to explore the world around them. They rely heavily on their nose, their whiskers, and occasionally their teeth to gather information. Everything unfamiliar becomes something worth investigating. Your hand is no exception. If your hamster approaches calmly, sniffs your fingers, and then gives a small nibble, it may not be trying to hurt you at all. It may simply be trying to figure out what you are. To your hamster, your skin, your scent, and even tiny traces of food can create a fascinating mystery. Their brain is constantly asking questions. Is this safe? Is this food? Is this familiar? Sometimes a gentle exploratory bite is part of finding the answer. The problem is that many owners immediately pull away in surprise and assume the worst. They believe the hamster has become aggressive when, in reality, the hamster may simply be investigating something new. Of course, there's a difference between a curious nibble and a defensive bite. A curious hamster usually appears relaxed, approaches voluntarily, and shows no signs of fear. Their body language feels calm rather than tense. What's fascinating is that this behavior reveals something important. Your hamster is paying attention to you, studying you, trying to understand you. And sometimes, what feels like a bite isn't an attack at all. It's your hamster's way of asking a question. Many owners focus on the bite itself. They try to understand what triggered it in those few seconds. But what they don't realize is that the bite may be the result of days, weeks, or even months of accumulated stress. Trust is built through repeated positive experiences. But the opposite is also true. Fear is built through repeated negative experiences. A hamster that is constantly startled, handled too quickly, woken up unexpectedly, or exposed to situations that make it feel unsafe may slowly begin to lose confidence in its environment. At first, the signs are subtle. Maybe it hides more often. Maybe it becomes less curious. Maybe it hesitates before approaching your hand. These small changes are easy to miss. But inside your hamster's mind, something important is happening. The feeling of safety is beginning to disappear. And when safety disappears, trust often follows. This doesn't mean your hamster has stopped caring about you. It doesn't mean the bond is gone forever. It simply means that fear has started taking up space where comfort once existed. Eventually, that emotional tension can reach a breaking point. That's when a bite may happen. Not as an act of aggression, not as revenge, but as a signal. A message that something in the relationship no longer feels secure. What's heartbreaking is that many owners see the bite as the problem when in reality it's often the symptom. The real issue started much earlier. And if you've ever experienced this with your hamster, the final reason may be the most important one of all. Because every bite carries a message, and understanding that message can completely change the way you see your pet. Every hamster bite tells a story. The problem is that most owners only see the bite itself and never stop to understand the message behind it. When a hamster bites, it's communicating in one of the few ways it knows how. Unlike humans, hamsters can't explain when they're scared. They can't tell you when they're confused. They can't ask for more space or explain that something feels wrong, so they communicate through behavior. And sometimes that behavior is a bite. What makes this so important is that not all bites mean the same thing. One hamster may bite because it's frightened. Another may bite because it feels trapped. Another may bite because it's confused by an unfamiliar scent. And sometimes a curious hamster may gently nibble simply because it's trying to understand the world around it. The bite is only the surface. The real answer is hidden underneath. That's why understanding your hamster is not about focusing on what it did, it's about understanding why it did it. When you begin looking at behavior this way, everything changes. A bite stops being an act of aggression. It becomes information. It becomes communication. It becomes your hamster's attempt to tell you something it cannot put into words. And perhaps that's the biggest misunderstanding of all. Most people ask, why does my hamster bite me? But maybe that's the wrong question. Maybe the better question is, what is my hamster trying to tell me? Because the moment you stop seeing the bite as a problem and start seeing it as a message, you begin understanding your hamster on a completely different level. And sometimes that understanding becomes the very thing that transforms fear into trust, uncertainty into comfort, and a simple pet into a true companion. Now, you'll never look at a hamster bite the same way again. If this video helped you understand your hamster a little better, make sure to like the video and subscribe. Because the truth is, most people will only ever see a hamster as a small pet. But the people watching videos like this know there's something more beneath the surface. They know that every behavior has a meaning, every reaction tells a story, and every moment of trust is something special. This channel is for owners who want to understand, not just care for, their hamsters. People who pay attention to the small things. People who want to build a real bond with the tiny animal depending on them every day. So if you've ever looked at your hamster and felt like there's more going on inside that little mind than most people realize, you're in the right place. Subscribe and join a community of owners who want to see their hamsters differently. Because the more you understand them, the closer you become. And your hamster may be telling you far more than you ever imagined.